Carnival is one of the greatest fun of my life, especially during summer. Although accidents are impossible sometimes, they should not be masterminded by evil personnel who lurk around looking for victims. Let's go on now, as I share with you some carnival horror stories. Story 1. Sadist Revenge Seeker. Another summer would be incomplete without a carnival, replete with a large swimming pool or beach, a circus, skating rollers, and all the necessary costumes. I organized my carnival this summer in this manner. I don't want anything or anyone to get in the way of my success at this point. I was still deep in daydreaming about my summer carnival when my mother entered the room. She asked me, "What are you up to this time?" With a smile, I confided in her about my intentions for the carnival. Mom's cheeks flushed, and I thought I'd scared the bees away. Although my mother is incredibly affectionate, she does not waver in her commitment to her children's safety. "What carnival?" she stammered to ask me. "Was it that one planned every summer that we went to last year with Uncle Marvin?" And I replied, "Yes." But she quickly put on a kind smile to silence me before I could tell her everything, and I could notice the changes in her countenance. Her words, "Cannibals and Killers Avenue," came out of nowhere. She tried to hide her regret, but words have a very delicate quality. The deed is already done. Every year, there are some horrifying details in a flashback of Dana's carnival, but the fun is still the same. It is inevitable for the weaker participants in any enjoyable activity to suffer harm. I told my mother that she shouldn't say things like that since they are meant for the weak. I told her that I was Superman, to reassure her that everything would be all right and to allay her worries. I partially succeeded. While seeming calm, my mother expressed her concerns and said, "Well, dear, have fun this summer, but be careful, especially with the people you ride with." She also reminded me to check in with her as she was leaving. "It's okay," I answered. When the much-anticipated day finally arrived, everyone who was aware of the carnival was dressed to the nines. We were all dressed in gorgeous new costumes instead of our typical attire. In our costumes, we hardly recognized each other. We all appeared to be young people at this carnival, which is amazing to me. Some of us may be much older than others, but it doesn't matter. We arrived and made our choice of a group where we could spot a stunning female dressed nicely, or we could join any friends group that knew who we were. I selected a bunch of acrobats who jumped and flew into the air while grinning and cheering enthusiastically at the onlookers. The audience was having a great time, and several of them stopped what they were doing to watch my amazing show. During one of my somersaulting exercises, I caught sight of a slender woman displaying a vivid mask in front of my eyes. A plump, overweight man stood next to her as if he were waiting for the right moment to strike. My enthusiasm is waning, and my desire to keep going is fading quickly. I sensed something was off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. In an attempt to overcome my nervousness and rediscover my groove, I chose to do something less fun alone, away from friends. Unfortunately, they trailed behind me, joined me in the swings, and tightened the ropes tightly. Normally, I want my swings to be a little loose for comfort and relaxation, but since my partners are unknown, I tried to play along and kept quiet. The woman complimented me on my move and said she hoped to see more of me at carnivals in the future. The chubby-looking companion, wearing an outdated costume that covered his whole face, was forcing a smile at me, flashing his braces wearing greenish-brown teeth. It's not good for me that my swing has risen above the maximum. My knots were getting slack too, as if it had been altered, while her male counterpart was busy fondling the belt of my swings, which I was still gripping tightly. This female kept telling me stories about carnivals in other locations throughout the world, in an attempt to divert my attention from the danger I was in. Even though I felt like I was practically hanging in midair, I tried to stay on hold. Slimming liquid was poured over my head and face like a shower of rain. I lost the little balance I had and fell onto the costumes and pub decorations, hitting various individuals until landing on the floor by myself. My mother was shouting when I last heard her voice. 2 days later, I woke up to find myself surrounded by medical professionals, staring at me like I was a ghost. A large portion of my face was covered in bandages. When the doctors told my mother I was still alive, she walked in beaming. It was discovered throughout the investigation that my attacker, Veronica, lost her only son in the Carnival 12 years prior. Ever since she decided to murder any young, intelligent man who is the center of attraction during any Carnival event every year. It was also found that she employs many mad guys to carry out her plan, using a different method to murder her victims. She can put drugs in her victims' drink or cover their face with her handkerchief after dispersing poisonous chemicals all over it. My mother came looking for me, and somebody who saw me change activity told her where he spotted me last. My mother followed the lead and saw me with the fellows. She was shocked to see such a scary-looking man and suspected something off. However, before she could get help, I was already on the floor, but she gave the officials their description, and the cops were fast enough to get them this time. Veronica has also confessed to killing 11 young guys during every year's carnival. My escape was a miracle. Story 2. Desperate friendship. Last year I relocated to a new city where I did not know anybody, and I felt all alone because I am an only child. So growing up as a kid was frustrating. All I had to play with was the PlayStation alongside my toys and cartoons. In this new town, I could hardly find anybody to play with. So I decided to go for a walk around one of the neighborhoods. While there, I could hear a funny noise coming out of a spot, but I decided to double up my steps to avoid trouble, although I urgently needed a friend. As I was about to give up my search, I saw a boy called Darius, and we started talking about ourselves, and I introduced myself to him. I was very happy. Moreover, I like Darius, even though I just met him. He reminds me of the classmates I had years before they also moved to another country. We exchanged numbers, and he told me there was a carnival in the woods where we must get the tickets before entering. I went home and was able to pay for the tickets. We got there, and since I was new, I decided to allow him to lead me in the games since I was not familiar with the people there. There was this rude clown that saw us and made some derogatory comments about me, but I decided to stay calm. This clown challenged me to a game I am not familiar with. Darius was able to outwit him, but I could not. Again, he laughed mockingly and said, "I am a girl, not good for anything, except hanging out with boys and strangers." I told Darius to take me elsewhere. We got to a cage-like bungle circus, and I was excited to go in. Suddenly, from the blues, the clown I ran away from pushed me aside quickly, jumped on my seat, laughed hysterically to my face, and dared ask me, "What are you going to do now?" He went further to look me in the eyes and said, "You don't even know me because you cannot see me." Darius just stood looking at us, as if he were enjoying the whole scene, while I was being tortured and hurt unreasonably. He brought his hands together, as if to get a handshake, but he had tiny, sharp objects in his hands, and poked me with them. Again, I was hurt. This time I called the attendant, and he lied in a very childish manner, saying that he was just playing little games with me, and I was just freaking out like the weak girl that I am. He left, but not quite long after the attendants were out of reach. He came out, and when Darius tried to sit by me in the ball circus, he jumped in between us. And this time he pushed me and I hit my body in the woods. This time, Darius told him to stop, and he just looked at him without saying a word. He spread his hands like a bird about to fly, but turned around and wiggled his costume clown tail at me. He is crazy, dangerous, and weird, I thought. I told Darius to please take me home. I got home and narrated the various scenes of abuse to my mother, who told me to call Darius to get more information about him having lived in this town all his life. I got a shock that broke my heart twice. Darius told me I had dialed a wrong number and that I should never call that number again. He also told me that the clown I was angry with was his father, who is weird and usually gets jealous of seeing him with friends, especially girls. He said I was lucky with him because his father has magic, which he uses on his victims or those he disdains in every carnival. This makes it easy for him to take them to the deep woods and transform into a real clown. Furthermore, he told me that he had never met me that day. I pleaded with my mother to drop every charge before the worst happens, which may be too late before the police show up. I felt irritated and ashamed of myself for my desperate search for a friend. The carnival I never enjoyed was able to expose his true identity to me. I have learned a bitter lesson, but I am still breathing. Story 3. My worst carnival. My name is Kenny, and I was born into a family that loves carnivals. Maybe that is why I was born on a day when my parents were traveling to another city's carnival during one beautiful, breathtaking summer. If I were a girl, I guess I would have been called Summer, or I could have changed my name to Carnival. But my friends warned me they would call me Cannibal instead, and this discouraged me from doing that. I love the beautiful sight of the decorations and paintings I see all around me. I also love the rides, such as the roller coasters, which were an obvious choice for fun seekers like me. My favorite of them all is the classic steel roller coaster, with its deep drops that have sharp turns. It is so exhilarating to roll in them all. My father and uncle also chose their favorite games with some old college friends. My mother is not doing much in this year's carnival, but she just sat there watching us while we rolled it from side to side. Could she be sick, or is she pregnant? Don't be silly, I said to myself. She is a bit off that. My dad's old school friends came up with the suggestion of rocking this carnival in a grand style, in which they brought out their credit cards. I saw this from the rollers, and I wondered why he didn't inform me like he always does before taking this unwise decision. Are they about to gamble? I paused for a moment, but I thought of not allowing assumptions to mess up my fun. My dad's old college friends are not really the best men in this city. Although this ought to be a family affair like it always has been for us, I don't know why they are here. I took my mother aside and tried to ask some questions, but she seemed not to follow or figure out what I meant, so I decided to sink it in. After all, my uncle is a lawyer, and he is there with them if anything goes wrong. He will fix it. In this game, my father was distracted and drinking most of the time. He lost and could no longer figure out what he was doing. My uncle was called by a client and left my dad in the hands of these cunning and criminal-minded old boys. I didn't like them one bit. There were some papers with my dad, who was smiling foolishly this time. My guess was right. He was tipsy and had been fooled by his crooked old fellows into signing an agreement to be defrauded. A friendly game in the carnival that was abuzz with lots of activities became an avenue for a gambling game by the old boys who claimed my father owed them some bulk, and he refused to pay it back. Moreover, there is no better way to get back what belongs to them than through a friendly game in the open before a lawyer who is also a witness. I called my uncle and confronted him, but he regretted his actions and told me that my father never told him he owed them at any time. My dad later laid down the cards by telling me that he was once the association treasurer, and some money was handed over to him, but he was careless with it. He thought they had forgotten, but they were able to get at him smartly by taking him unaware. My mom was mad, but my father always had his way with words to get her in the mood. I was mad. This is my worst carnival ever. I must leave for my uncle's place until he sorts out his finances. I can't stand being broke. Do you love scary stories? Check out our previous video. It is a must-watch for you.